Hello and welcome to Daily Austin Music. My name is Colin McDonald.
This is Austin Music News.
On Monday, September 9th, I went down to the Music Commission meeting at the One Texas Center and wanted to give you an update on what all that happened there. Before we start talking about this meeting, I just want to point out I did not get everything on film. I wasn't even planning on filming anything until I noticed that there was no cameras in the room that we were meeting, and that was kind of weird because usually all these meetings are live streamed from City Hall. But I figured it needed to get out there in some way, so here it is. Every Music Commission meeting starts off with what's called citizen communication, which is the first 10 speakers to sign up can say whatever they want for 3 minutes. We had a lot of that. We had some representation from the Tejano music community, which is a very underserved genre in Austin music. And they also had a lot of people talk about the convention center expansion, and we'll get to that in a second. And next they moved to the chair's report, which Doug Leviton read a beautiful letter, a beautiful statement about the life of Stephen Greer, who passed away just last year. Then they moved on to old business, and in section 4A, they talked about the creative spaces issue. And Tom Van Skyke talked about the AI school closings and how that might be an opportunity for creative spaces in the city. Then Doug Leviton went over the talking points from the Joint Creative Spaces Task Force, I believe that's what it's called, and they have a proposed date of September 21st as when they'll release their recommendations. They also tied up a couple more loose ends on the creative spaces, but more importantly, they moved on to the convention center expansion next, which got into a very interesting debate. It started off with some Austin musicians talking about what they felt about the convention center expansion and what it could do for the music community.
And this is the first time that they've actually wanted to put dollars towards supporting that scene and emboldening that scene.
We're talking about the first ever public funding in the city of Austin for music. I mean, that's crazy to say that, but that's what this is.
You know, this is unprecedented. You know, for years, we've asked for some kind of way to have access to money like this, and I would like to see the Music Commission tonight to make a formal recommendation to move forward with the plan as it was voted unanimously by City Council.
It turned to a representative from Unconventional Austin, Fred Lewis, who had this to say.
I represented Mr. Linder in a successful lawsuit against the city on the misleading ballot language on Proposition B. A lot of misinformation. But that's what you should expect when you're dealing with a lot of money. And here's my recommendation, and we'll go through the ordinance line by line because there's a lot of misstatements about it. So my recommendation to you about the September 19th recommendation is that you support this ordinance, but that you change it so that it does what you want, which is to fund music. First of all, it says may fund. If it were me, I'd say shall fund.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Who do you work for?
I work for myself.
Right, who are you representing here today?
I am representing Unconventional Austin.
Okay, that wasn't made clear when you started speaking.
Well, I wrote it down.
And who funds Unconventional Austin?
I don't know, nobody's funded me.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I'm doing it here because I want y'all to get the money for music.
Are there other legal opinions concerning this matter?
Of course.
Do any of those legal opinions disagree with yours?
Yes.
And then moved on to Brian Rogers, who was also in support of Unconventional Austin, who is against the expansion of the convention center. And he talked at length about a lot of things.
The mayor is using this as a way to get your buy-in, and I think that's a disingenuous thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Liz signed up and said she was going to read a letter, and you were just going to read a letter. Well, you're doing is preaching.
No, it wasn't a letter. I was just going to read.
That's actually what you said. Was you were going to read his letter on his behalf?
I didn't say letter.
So can he go ahead and read his own? I was just going to read on behalf of him.
Yes.
He was able to make it. Okay, thanks.
Then there was sort of a rebuttal from the president of the Music Venue Association and Music Moves Austin, Rebecca Reynolds.
I am an attorney. And I think to suggest that the people in this room aren't able to read or discern or express what they want is insulting. To use your status as an attorney to pander to this group is insulting, to say the least. We've been very close to this issue for going on 4 years now. I was at every single episode of the Visitor Impact Task Force. It's actually up online if anybody wants to see how the bread was baked. So if you have some concerns over the veracity or the transparency about that process, I encourage you to go watch it. It's all there. So to suggest that you've identified a source that nobody else would support is an absolute waste of time. So the fact that this particular bucket that the money is coming from has always been there is irrelevant, because the only way that we're going to get it out of that source is if we agree to this broader plan that helps the broader community.
Now, after all the discussion that followed that about the convention center expansion for and against, it was suggested by Gavin Garcia to make a motion that the Music Commission supported the convention center expansion. The vote ended up 7-4, 2 against, and 2 absent. But before they took the vote, this happened. And it's long, so I'll say goodbye now, and hopefully I would love to see your comments about all of this down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.
I chose to be on the Visit Impact Task Force because there was nobody else Black in that group. But I regret, honestly, going along with the with what I felt like every time I had a chance to speak up for the people that I represent, which would be Black people, or what they call Black people. It's just a word. You got to mean to it, but you guys know what I mean when I say that. And you know, I chose to be a part of that because I felt like, you know, if I didn't, shit, that voice would not be there at all. And so I spoke as often as I could and made recommendations that I felt like were a part of the recommendations that they put forth to City Council. But when it was time to write the recommendations and I volunteered to be a part of that, they chose to somehow leave me out of that process. Which again, you know, I was apologized to. People were saying, oh, that was an oversight. But what it does is it represents Austin in a nutshell for me. In my experience as a Black musician, as a Black person in this city, I have no faith in their points about delivering anything to these underrepresented groups that have historically been neglected. Historically. And as much as I represent musicians, I represent Black people. And my presence was tokenized in that group. And I will no longer be associated in any type of tokenized, weaponized type of situation. I do not want my name. I regret, deeply regret going along with that. Because regardless of what this man was saying about the writing, I'm about the action, and what I saw through the actions of that group was what I've experienced in the city as a Black person. And it continues, and it continues, and it continues. So I was asked by the Councilwoman Natasha Madison to be part of this group. I had to think twice, 3, and 4 times about even being a part of something like this because of my experiences in this city. I'm here regardless of the ways that, you know, people continue to talk about equity, but somehow my voice continues to be ignored. Somehow, when I'm present on a regular basis, somehow these people forget to put me in the room. Somehow these people forget to involve me in what's going on, but they continue to make money off of this idea of equity. They do not live the idea of equity. And it's sickening, it's disturbing, and I will not. I wish I could go back in time and have the foresight to see what these folks do and how they do it. I have absolutely no faith that this money will go to anybody that represents what I represent in this city. None. At all.
I come from Tlapas community, and I completely agree with him. There's absolutely no hope that any of that money will see it in our communities. He lives it every day. I came in, and I see it too, as a Mexican American. So what Chaka is saying is what his community feels, and I'm a member of that community. I have been for 6-7 years now.
So I will not vote for this. I will not recommend it. And whoever recommends it, that's fine. That's your decision. You don't live my experience. I am present in so many ways in this city. I do show up in so many ways in this city. And yet, the people that make decisions in this city leave me out of the room because they're scared of my voice, because they're afraid to come to grips with the reality that's been created here by the folks in power. They don't want to come to grips with that. So they tokenize people and they choose people that are going to go along with what they want to see happen. Period. And so I'm not one of those people. Don't ever get it twisted. I'm not one of those people.
Chaka, can I ask you a question? You see here a political battle. There's one group of people who wants to build a convention center for their own economic interests. There's another group of people that do not want to see this convention center built for their own economic interests. And
is that what you see?
That is what I see.
Okay, it's not what
Okay.
I just told you what I see.
Yeah, I know what you see. Well, I don't know what you see, but what you said. Do you think that the people who are arguing against against the building of the convention center, despite whatever this lawyer's claim was that he was all for it, do you think that they are doing what they want to do for the benefit
I don't really
of
care.
communities?
I really don't care with it. I really don't care. Like it's the continued negligence of the people that say they're going to do something. Like I said, I was there present, hours and hours of these meetings, hours and hours, and sitting and talking about these things. The first meeting I was at, I asked one of the guys from the convention center, how is your presence at this thing not a conflict of interest? How is your very presence at this thing not a conflict of interest? You got upset. I was just asking a question. Well, I'm not voting. These are the spaces I have to come in on a regular basis to get what I need to get as an African American, striving to hold cultural space for people that continue to be historically neglected, historically oppressed, historically marginalized. So I sat through these meetings, and you know, after a certain point, I was like, well, I got my points in. I see.
I'm just waiting for the chair to recognize me too, so that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
I got my points in. I felt like, okay, the things that I was asking for would not have, or talked about, would not have even been there if I wasn't there. Okay, you know what? I'll go along with this. Something might possibly happen from this. Maybe there's some type of a little sliver of hope here. Maybe. And then these folks go and they write the recommendations without me when I specifically said I want to be a part of that group. What does that little, maybe tiny to y'all, message sent to me as somebody that was present there at every meeting except for one, expressing the need to hear and understand the needs of underserved communities, and you go and you write these recommendations you can give to council without the one person, the one black person that was bringing this up continuously in your face? It says, I have little to no faith in you saying and you doing anything that you say you're going to do for this paperwork and this lip service. And we got lots of paperwork and lots of lip service in Austin, tons of it. And the people that I represent are just tired of it. You know, and they question me for even being a part of this, some of these circus that goes on here in Austin. Because like, what do you expect to get out of that? You know, sometimes I tell them I don't know. I don't know why I'm here sometimes. Because of the actions that I see continuously in this city. Organizations that don't ever ask me a question about what's being done or what should be done. And they represent diversity and inclusion. It's sickening. My folks are tired of it. He's tired of it. And I'm not here in any type of tokenized type of position. And don't ever think that. You know, that's why I try to tell my people, I'm here for you. But I get why they question me for that, because it's what are we getting?
I just wanted to chime in and just thank Chuck. I mean, I have so much respect for you and what you do, and it's really disheartening to hear. You know, we spoke on the phone on Saturday, and you can tell me some of this then, and it was really tough to hear that then, and it's tough to hear it now. But it needs to be said. It needs to be heard.
It's even tougher to live it.
And I'm sure that is true.
You know what's that?
I'm sorry. But you know, I'm speaking as a Mexican American, gay musician who's been coming into this time and time again, and who's been on the commission, who's been chair of the commission, and I would just again encourage all the commissioners here tonight to pay attention to what Chaka's saying, because you know, we need to hear more voices, and part of what Patrick and I and the rest of the folks in the advisory panel are doing is trying to encourage more people to show up, especially people who feel like they're underserved. Remember that as you're moving forward. This is Chaka's experience, his life, and what he's living day in, day out. And I'm telling you from what I'm living day in, day out, that I need this money, and that this is important to me. Thanks.
You have a further discussion?
This money is the entity administering this money out. Myself, it's not easy. You know, Chaka would love to see this money, but who at the end of the day is cutting checks or overseeing who's cutting checks?
This is city tax, right? This is government. This is not private sector, no.
Okay.
So, history, looking at cultural arts, it's going to go through the city.
And with Department of
recommendations about this.
Cultural Arts.
Right now, they handle the hot tax for 2 generations now.
So my understanding from the Visitor Impact Task Force recommendation is that it would potentially go through a third party to administer the fund, and there would be a board, an advisory board on how to allocate those funds. I think when I spoke to you and your group last week, one of the ideas that NBA has floated that seems to be getting some traction for some of the money, not for all of the money, is a guaranteed rebate program where venues could submit the payments they've made to local musicians and get some of that money back. So we can raise what we're able to pay local musicians and help the bottom line for venues. So again, all of that is up for debate. What we have to do first is secure the funds, and then we can talk about who do we trust to manage that fund and what do we want to do with it. But we would get way ahead of ourselves and draw a whole lot of arrows if we start telling people this, that, or the other when we haven't had the chance to vet any of those possible solutions yet.
But they decided to the city council. And we're advising them.
Yeah. Any further discussion? So you have a motion, do you have a second?
Let me reread it.
Yeah.
The Austin Music Commission supports City Council's May 23rd, 2019 vote to expand the Austin Convention Center with the Visitors Impact Task Force recommendations as a guiding framework to move forward with expansion.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion at that point? All in favor?
Please help keep your hands up.
All opposed? Motion carries.